What Lance? I don't know if I would say it was a Mickey Mouse tournament. We'll just get right into it. We don't waste any time here on the Earlverse. I don't think you could call the Dallas Stars a Mickey Mouse um, opponent. I mean, I think Edmonton definitely had the better bracket, I guess, against the Kings, who have lost to the Edmonton Oilers now 3 straight years. This might be controversial, but I don't know if the Edmonton Oilers have a better team than the Kings, and I'm sure you're looking at me going, "Huh? How could they not have a better team and beat them 3 straight seasons in a row?" I mean, they have Connor McDavid. I mean, you put Connor McDavid on the LA Kings, and the LA Kings win against Edmonton 3 years in a row. So what up? What up, AEW for life? I have not watched Collision yet, so no spoilers. Thank you very much. Hit the like button. Hit the subscribe button if you have not done so already. I'm doing what up? One Santos One. I'm doing a pre-comedy store set. Earlverse. But I mean, the Oilers' first round opponent, my beloved Kings, we are all soldiers in the Earl Army. They played Rittich, Big Save Dave, and Cam Talbot. Not horrible goalies, but and then the second round they played against a backup. Third round, Ottinger's like the real deal, but McDavid's a difference maker, man. He's just fucking that good. Bobrovsky tonight was on another level. I think he stopped 3 breakaways in the first period. That's, I root for him. He got a lot of shit a couple years ago when he signed that a $10 or $11 million deal. They drafted Spencer Knight, who was the heir apparent. Many people clamoring for Spencer Knight to take over for Bobrovsky, trade Bobrovsky. Some people wanted him bought out. He's a 2-time Vezina winning trophy goalie. Like, he's the real deal. So, they wanted Alex Lyon. Bobrovsky, of course, right now he's beloved in Florida, but this is not a guy who, not just the fans, but the Florida management, I'm sure, it's kind of like the Kings right now with Pierre-Luc Dubois. Everyone wants him gone. Fans want him gone. I'm sure Rob Blake is like, "Hey, motherfucker, you're about to cost me my job." And you can turn it around. Hopefully Dubois does, but jury's still out on that. Brennan got a wild drunk show right now. I mean, I don't think he'll mind that I'm taking 7 people from his stream. 100% Lance. I mean, if Dubois wins them a Stanley Cup next year, it's like, man, we got a bargain. He had one bad year, but that's Dubois' mode of operandi, if you will, of, first year in Columbus, he wasn't good. Second year, he did very well. Same thing in Winnipeg. And, obviously he had 40 points this year. It's not like he was horrible, but, when you're making $8.5 million and you're the heir apparent to Kopitar, that was a bad year. But, Bobrovsky, I said before, I picked the Panthers in 7. And, I did see some bad signs for the Panthers tonight. I mean, if Bobrovsky's not like Johnny Money, they lose that game probably. I mean, they scored. I mean, we'll count the empty netter, but, if Bob isn't on, they lose that game 5-2. Um, I mean, he stopped, I think, one or two one-timers from McDavid in close. Didn't give up many juicy rebounds. And no, the Arizona Coyotes, you can see them play next year in Utah. Um, I mean, my only concern, and once the Kings are out, I don't root for a specific team. It's not like I root for the Panthers because, yeah, you Oilers beat my Kings. Fuck you. I don't really feel great if the Panthers win because the Kings lost to the Oilers. But you're playing with fire with the dumb penalties, especially in Edmonton, when you're going to have the last line change and you could get the lineups and the matchups that you want out there. I mean, if you look at that Oilers power play, we haven't seen a power play like this when they are operating at proficiency since maybe the 80s Oilers. I mean, you've got Draisaitl, McDavid, Hyman, and they play the whole power play. And then if they're feeling it, they'll put Nugent Hopkins on the point with Bouchard. I mean, who do you guard? I mean, obviously you guard McDavid, because if you can cut McDavid off, then Draisaitl and Hyman might struggle to create on their own. They really rely on McDavid, but then you throw it to Bouchard, and then you throw it to Nugent Hopkins, who was a number one pick. I mean, you've got a number one pick, and he's basically the fifth option on the power play. So, I did a breakdown of the rosters. I think the Panthers have better goaltending. I think the Panthers 1 through 20 have the better team. But I think the Oilers 1 through 6, I'm talking about the forwards, and you could throw Bouchard in there, so maybe 1 through 7 have the higher skill. So, I mean, I disagree with you big time there, Lance. And I'm a King guy, but I've seen McDavid play several times live, and I'm telling you, live, he's like watching a fucking video game. I don't think he's one-dimensional at all. He's pretty good defensively, because he's got the speed to catch up to anyone in the league. Now, I do think he's hurt. Even tonight, he looked a little off. But are you a Panthers fan, Lance? I forget. And I noticed the Panthers kind of, there was one play, the announcers didn't seem to think it was on purpose, but if you look at it when Bennett collided with McDavid at the blue line, that was no accident. They're going to rough up McDavid, and they should, but you just can't take penalties. Or I'm telling you, what up, Ross Incognito? We're starting the Earlverse stream, coming in hot, talking about Game 1 of the Stanley Cup Finals. Going to be a great series. I mean, if the Panthers play like they do tonight, minus the bad penalties, they're going to be pretty tough to beat. I said it before the series started. I mean, they have the edge in goal. I mean, especially if Bob Bryant. And, you really can't. I don't think Skinner played a bad game. I don't think the 2 goals that were scored on him, of course, the third being an empty netter, I don't think you could sit there and go they were his fault. I mean, they were just defensive breakdowns. And, the second goal by, I think, Rodriguez, just barely escaped an Oilers stick. I'm talking by an inch. But that's the game. I mean, they say baseball is a game of inches, but hockey is a game of a quarter inch. I mean, if that puck hits the Oilers stick instead of flying out to Rodriguez, it's just a broken up play. Well, I do find, I mean, listen, it was good to see a sold out crowd. I mean, listen, my parents, Lance and Queen on, and everyone else in the stream, all 6 of you, they lived in Miami, Sunset Island. So when I would go visit them, I would go to Panther games. Now we're talking, not knowing how old you are, Lance, and it was nice to meet you at Hackamania. Thank you very much for attending. I'm talking the era of Paul Loss, uh, Kirk Muller, John Van Beesbrook, Brent Severin, Ed Jovanowski, Jovo Cop. Oh, thank you, Ross. Thank you for watching that. I mean, I think Florida specifically is a good fan base when the Panthers are winning. Um, but if you look at their regular season games, there's a lot of empty seats. I mean, I forget what comic from the '70s, or I think it was a comic from the '80s had the joke of, what was the joke? There's 800,000 Canadians living in Florida, and they moved there because they all hate hockey. Um, it's like Nashville. That's a great hockey town when the Predators are winning. I mean, Tampa Bay. I mean, Jesus, I remember when my brother got married there, the first year the Lightning played there, they were playing in a fucking football stadium. Um, so, it took Tampa Bay a long time to get uh, a fan base to be loyal to them, but they also won Stanley Cups and they had great players, Lecavalier, Stamkos, St. Louis. Of course, my favorite playoff series of all time, and this is odd being a Kings fan, is the 1996 playoffs, the Philadelphia Flyers against the Tampa Bay Lightning. It was fucking blood sport because the Lightning's whole game plan, and it kind of has something to do with this series. The Panthers are like, how do we get to McDavid? How do we piss him off? How do we grind on him? And that was Tampa Bay's game plan against a prime Eric Lindros. And it was mainly three guys: Michel Petit, one of my favorite players, Igor Ulanov, and the great Rudy the Lionheart Poshek. All 6 games. Well, Poshek got suspended for a few. It was a needling Lindros going after him. More Petit than Ulanov, but it was like a 3-headed monster. And they just took so many penalties that the Flyers just tore it up. And, you didn't really necessarily see that tonight. It's not like the Panthers were like cheap shotting McDavid or Dryside or Hyman, excuse me. But you can tell, there's a couple times after the whistle, Kachuk had him in a headlock in the scrum, and, the Bennett play on the blue line, they had a plan to ruffle his feathers for sure. Yeah, I mean, Carolina Hurricanes, they have a great fan base, but they win every year, and they don't even win the cup. Well, they won the cup in '06, but which hockey teams have the best attendance? I mean, to be honest, the Canadian teams, Montreal sells out every game. Toronto sells out every game. Edmonton sells out every game. I think the Rangers sell out at pretty much every game. I mean, and it's unfair to in some of the American cities because in Edmonton, I've been to Edmonton. I've done comedy in Edmonton. There's nothing to do up there other than the Oilers, and to go to the comedy club. That's the comic strip in Edmonton. Tammy Bronson in the house. I mean, Utah, they should sell out most games next year because there's really not a lot to do in Utah. If the Jazz aren't playing, what are you doing on a Saturday night in Utah? Hey, let's go see the hockey team. We don't know what the hell is going on, but we're going to see it. What up, Kip Smith? Did you play Blades of Steel on Nintendo? Is a pig's dick pork? Shit. I got to wrap my head around some of the football. People asking me what I think the Steelers are going to do. I mean, they just signed Sutton, who allegedly beat the shit out of his girlfriend, and Detroit dropped him. And Pittsburgh swooped him right up. So I don't know if I like that. Yes, Kip Smith, responsible for the latest tonight's hot off the presses thumbnail. So give Kip Smith some love and follow him on Twitter. I mean, the Steelers, they're going to be an interesting team because they were very active in the offseason. Usually they don't really dive into free agency. They dove in big time and had some interesting what up elite uh, draft choices. You know, they drafted, I think, a linebacker. I think he has no ACL. Like, that's crazy to me. Like, no, I mean, he tore it twice, so he just doesn't have an ACL on his right leg. Like that, he was either the linebacker or the receiver they drafted. I think Wilson is his last name. I mean, that's fucking bonkers to play in the NFL with no ACL, not a repaired ACL. He got no ACL. Hello. What up, AJS? Who is on your hockey Mount Rushmore? I mean, this is a tough question because it's like, um, it depends what you value in a hockey player. I mean, obviously Gretzky. I mean, the guy. Now, yes, he was very lucky to play in an era where, um, wasn't the most skilled era of the NHL. Uh, but I would say Gretzky, Mark Messier, Mario Lemieux, and Gordie Howe. But if you want to get into, and that's not even counting the defensemen, like, you could throw Bobby Orr in there. You could throw, I mean, Larry Robinson, who's maybe not the most sexiest name you could think of, but it's like, he was good at everything. Or what are your thoughts on Caitlin Clark? I mean, I don't really follow the WNBA. I mean, she's definitely got people to notice the league, which is good. I mean, I know their games are selling out versus last year. They weren't drawing to like 30% capacity. So, I think for the WNBA to be relevant, they need a few more Caitlin Clarks. And I don't know if they're out there. But I'm not going to lie. I don't really follow women's basketball. So, I mean, I want to see dunks, but I do like the dirty play. Like that's like, they could, with the cheap shots and the fouls, like that's kind of like what got people into watching hockey. I was a season ticket holder with the Panthers for a long time. The biggest crowds were always Montreal, Toronto, Boston, Rangers, and Flyers were in town and visiting fans. Yeah, I mean, that's like in LA, when the Kings played Detroit, it's literally 50-50, the crowd, bone on bone. Well, that's what happened to me with my ACL. I had a knee-to-knee hit, 1991, and my legs were so fucking big and strong. I mean, I was Tom Platz, Baby Platz. They called me at Family Fitness Center in Beverly Hills. And then so I had no ACL. Didn't know it until about 2004. I started getting these really jabbing pains in both sides of my knee. So I go to get an X-ray, and the doctor says, you have no ACL, right? Which, goes back to the ACLs are hack. But, I have a cadaver. I have a dead person's ACL in my right leg. RIP Virgil, yes. A little late to the party on that one, Ross. Peter Chicken Man Brennan, $2. What did you do to Stuttering John? He called you hack. I haven't talked to Stuttering John since the benefit show we did in like 2016. So I did nothing to Stuttering John. And I've never said anything bad about him, to be honest with you. I've got one story about him. That's it. WNBA should be like the lingerie bowl. I'll second that. I don't know if I want to see too many of those WNBA bodies in lingerie. Yeah, Jamar Chase is going to get some big money. Has WNBA made a profit yet? I don't think so, but I don't know. Lance, $1.99. Melton was bragging, saying he only paid you $100. No, he paid me more than that. Melton did me right. I mean, I know Melton isn't the most popular guy in the world with the Dabbleverse and people who local Vegas comics. Some of them aren't exactly fans of his, but he treated me right. So Peter Chicken Man Brennan, Lance. I might have to leave the gun here just in case. Yeah, I don't know. I don't really, I'm at the Comedy Store tonight. And I've always spoken highly of Stuttering John. I mean, so I don't really care what he thinks about me. I mean, I truly don't. Like he might be more known than I am, but okay. You get any new Osprey merch recently, buddy? I could have met Osprey last Saturday night, but I was so fucking tired from my drive back from Vegas, I fell asleep. And Dolph Ziggler called me up because he was wrestling on the Lucha Brothers card. And he's like, dude, I just put you over to Osprey. Where are you? And I was in tears. I was so tired. Shout out to Nick Nemeth, Ryan Nemeth. They got a big tag team match this Friday night in Chicago. TNA, baby dolls. Is it harder to write or perform comedy? I mean, for me, it's harder to write because I'm a natural performer. That's why when people say, "Oh, you're a stand-up comic," I'm like, "No, I'm a performer." Um, no, I didn't meet him. I could have met him, but I was so tired from the drive back because last Saturday I left Vegas at 11, I don't know, 11:30, and got back to LA around 4:30. Took me another hour because the gay parade was on Sunday, but they close off all the streets in my neighborhood on Saturday. So literally it took me an hour to go a quarter of a mile from Santa Monica and La Cienega, which is literally a tenth of a mile from my house. I had to go up to Sunset. Of course, everyone's taking Sunset for shortcuts. I was exhausted. I told Nick, Dolph, whatever you want to call him, brother, I'm beat. I'm sorry. I met Dolph Ziggler through Sarah Tiana at the Comedy Store, and we've been buds ever since. I do remember Rock and Roll High School, but I don't remember a lot of the movie. I think I may have seen it once or twice. If RFK wants you for VP, would you accept? No, I got too many skeletons, man. All they would do is interview girls I dated and forget it. I mean, I've never treated a woman badly in my life, but I know how that game goes. Do you know anybody that ever personally knew Eddie Nash? If so, did they have any stories? Well, I will say that I was talking to a very famous rock and roller on my podcast. And I remember during the interview, I asked him, "Hey, you've been around the scene. You saw Motley Crue when they were called London at the Starwood. Any cool Eddie Nash stories?" Now, this particular episode was not video; it was audio only, and he just shot me a look like, I ain't talking about him." So, and I think he was still alive at that point. I think Nash died in 2014, so maybe he wasn't. So he's still, even in his 80s, scared people. What up, William Zoom? Who's your favorite Mick Foley character? Uh, I like Mankind, especially when him and Abdullah the Butcher were in the electric chair in WCW. Thank you very much. Thoughts on the Ramones? I'm not a super huge fan, but I don't hate on them. I'm not really a punk rock guy. Although Motorhead, you might argue, was kind of a punk metal band, with the attitude. Yeah, London was, I think Nikki Sixx's first band, and I think that's where him and Vince Neil met. Will you ever do a whole live stream as Tim Gunn? There's not enough super chats in the world that would make me do that. I always thought Cactus Jack was the best, but in fairness, Foley did the best work as Mankind. Yeah, I think in that match with Abdullah the Butcher, I think it was a War Games for WCW. He was Cactus Jack. Haven't got to read Mankind's book. Here's my newest book I'm reading. I try and read a chapter a day of a book. The title got me. Fuck it. It's a great book. Yeah, hit the like button. Abdullah probably gave a lot of people hepatitis. Um, so can you imagine walking into Abdullah the Butcher's rib joint and seeing Abdullah? You know how much Abdullah the Butcher probably sweated in a hot kitchen, just dripping into the burgers. There's some good wrestling books. Jericho's was good. And then Matthew Randazzo wrote a book. It might have been on Benoit that was good. I forget. I remember it was a good book. That's Randazzo. Matthew Randazzo was like, maybe it's Who Killed WCW or something like that. Tell us about. Well, I just started reading it. Well, basically, the principle is if you don't like doing something, just say fuck it and don't do it. You got Becky's yet? No, I'm not a big WWE guy, so I don't have a lot of interest in reading that book. Yeah, he probably does, Michael. Well, he gave Hannibal, that guy who has a popular wrestling stream, he gave Hannibal hepatitis and cost him his gig in WWE. He was about to sign with WWE, and then he got hepatitis. Good evening, SCVID show. I know Kevin Brennan right now is live. Yes, Osprey and Swerve. That's a good match. Now AEW's got some, great potential for matches in the upcoming months, and I'm very curious as to what the build up to All In London will be. Now, WWE. They say WWE plans their WrestleManias a year out. I have a feeling AEW does not do that. But so you got on. I look at on paper the roster. You got to figure Ospreay wants to win in London. Swerve's a great champion. You got to figure MJF didn't come back to not be champion, and you got to figure Okada. They signed him probably under the guise of, hey, you'll be champion one day. So you got 4 legit guys who you could make a good case for being champion. And then you got a couple other guys on the outside, Wardlow, if they could ever rehabilitate, his character, they've restarted him like 2 or 3 times. And, Powerhouse Hobbs, I think, would be a great champion eventually. You got to figure Daniel Bryant probably wants one last kick of the can. So, you've got Forbidden Door June 30th, and then you've got, I think, Blood and Guts in July, and then All In London. So it's going to be a very interesting couple months for AEW. No, I was not at the Comedy Store when Robin Williams relapsed during Rick's birthday. But yes, you're in bad shape when you're a recovering addict and you're hanging out with PJ and Davey Wester. That's some Comedy Store references for you guys. I mean, I will say in Bakersfield, it was kind of a bummer to see all these great matches, including Ospreay and Malachi Black. That's another guy who I don't know if they would ever make him champion, but he's fucking good, man. But it was kind of a bummer, to be there and see the other half of the arena. Nobody there except for the first couple rows because they wanted and I noticed on TV they made the arena look like it was completely full. So I thought there were some good TV tricks there. But I also noticed, the great thing with Malachi Black is when he had his match in Bakersfield against Kyle O'Reilly, I think they said to each other, "Hey, let's hit each other." They were hitting. It was a shoot basically. If Ospreay wins, he'll have 2 belts already. I'm just scared they're making him the new Roman and he never loses. I mean, I like him better as a heel, to be honest. Right now he's a face. I was watching the Stanley Cup, Boulder Johnny, and I was sleeping as well. So, I think Ospreay's, listen, he's over with the fans as a face. And I think when Mark Davis gets better, it'll be interesting to see if they put Osprey back with United Empire. Kyle Fletcher, Mark Davis is like the Arn Anderson of the group, and Osprey is the leader. That's how he came into AEW. And you've got Omega. He'll be in the title contention if he's ever healthier again. And I see they're bringing tag teams. Who was it? Claudio and Yuta wrestled tonight as a tag. So maybe, they're trying to get the Young Bucks, because with the trio stuff, it's great. Some great trios guys, but it kind of has ruined the tag team division. So it'll be interesting to see, um, what they devote more time to. Copeland, I mean, I knew when Copeland jumped off, it's kind of similar to how Sid broke his legs. So let's see if we can. We'll use Giant Robot. So when Copeland jumped off, like we'll use this as the ring here. When you jump down from the top like he did, you jump like that, your legs are going to buckle. What he should have done is maybe jump like that, stomach, or at least jump, where his knees landed first and then he landed soft on the guy on the stomach. But when you jump like that, I mean, your legs are going to buckle and you're going to either break your ankle, which he did, or you're going to break your femur, which I think is what Sid did. It's just crazy that, but I'm sure he didn't feel comfortable jumping, like flying out like Superman, landing on your kneecaps, and then softly landing on the guy with your chest and stomach. But, and he's also, I mean, he's got to be maybe a little younger than me. I don't know how old Edge is. And, your body just can't, if he was 25, he probably doesn't break his ankle. So hopefully he's all right. If he gets better by London, I don't know if they put the belt on him, but that'd be a good match. Davey West had a better chance as a pro boxer, 100% there. Well, I think in Bakersfield, I don't know if I would have done the show in Bakersfield just because it's 2.5 hours outside of LA. I don't think Bakersfield is known as a wrestling town. So you're asking the majority of the people in that arena to drive out to Bakersfield on a Wednesday. Now, for someone like me who doesn't have an office job or whatever, yeah, no problem. I could do that. But maybe someone brought it up to me that, well, they probably got a good deal on the arena. I mean, if AEW is not there that night, that arena is completely dark. So I'm sure they basically paid AEW to come, Yeah, that's it. I mean, I don't know what Sid was thinking. He'd never done a rope move before in his life. But I bet someone from WCW, you should do it, man. It'll go over. Well, I don't know if WWE wouldn't have had him taking a bump like that. They probably would have said, listen, if you want to do that bump, do it, but don't jump feet first. You're going to break your fucking leg. Yeah, Edge does look a lot like the guy from Cobra. Oh, come on, man. What are you, draws, crony, Michael? William Jim might be onto something, especially if you're a woman. That still freaks me out. Like, it's so weird to me that was a sexual fetish of Vince. I mean, I've been into some weird stuff sexually with multiple people in the room. I've never once looked at my buddy Eric and said, hey, man, take a shit on her head. And, hey, honey, don't wash it. Yeah, but Sid, someone showed me a picture of Sid recently. It was today. He's still pretty big, man. I mean, he's got to be in his 60s, and it's not someone, if I saw walking around an airport, I'd fuck with. But I would have thought And maybe he did, I don't know what goes on behind the scenes at AEW, but maybe Adam Copeland. If I were him, I would have asked Osprey or even Jack Perry, who's done some pretty wacky stunts off of a cage, Malachi Black as Brody King, Buddy Matthews. Hey, how would you guys do this? Because I'm a little unsure. And I'd love to see Brody King and Buddy Matthews in singles matches. I mean, for a long time, Buddy Matthews was being basically called the younger, bigger Kenny Omega. Best wrestling town in California is probably Los Angeles. And San Francisco has a deep history with wrestling, with the Cow Palace, and LA probably is. I mean, the Forum has had many great wrestling cards. The Olympic Auditorium, which is now a Korean church, has certainly had many great wrestling matches back in the day. Yes, I am drinking Elevate water. It's not bad. I'm going to work out after this before my main room set. I mean, I've never broken my ankle, Dr. Nova, but I would think, once again, I'll get my giant robot. I mean, just if this is the wrestling mat and you're up here and you jump like that, your legs or ankle is just going to cave. I mean, Edge is probably, 250? So that's 250 pounds of dead weight just smack. I mean, you see, even when the doll does it, the ankles are a little wonky. And Sid, who was probably at the time of that stunt 270, 280, even just from the second rope. That is it's just it's body law of physics. Hogan, I believe, is originally from Tampa, if I'm not mistaken. Anaheim has had some wrestling cards. I believe didn't the LA Coliseum have a WrestleMania or something? I mean, I know SoFi. I was at the second night of WrestleMania 39. That was a fantastic card. So LA has a pretty rich history in pro wrestling. And there was when WWE was WWF at the time was more regional, and it was more East Coast and the South and whatnot. Wrestling was pretty big out here still. You had the Golden Greek, John Tolos, and people of that nature who were like the stars of this territory. And then WWE that was the Ultimate Warrior, I believe, with some parts unknown. I mean, I'm sure he has something in his leg. It's like that scene when Jaws and The Spy Who Loved Me. No, Jaws and Moonraker goes through the airport metal detector. I'm sure that's what the TSA people feel when they see Sid coming and the buzzer goes off. Elite. I'm sorry, I just saw this. MJF versus Osprey for the championship at All In London. I mean, that's a good one. I mean, that would definitely be a good match. I mean, I don't know who you would have go over there. I mean, it makes sense that it's in London, so it would be Osprey, but I don't see MJF coming back to lose. And he's signed long term now, so you got to figure he wants to be the champ. Or they could just go back and forth. Maybe Osprey wins in London, and then he loses to MJF. Where's MJF from? Maybe they do a pay-per-view where MJF is on Long Island. So maybe MJF gets the title back in Long Island, and you could go back and forth. I mean, those guys on the mic would be money. Now, MJF is kind of a face right now, and so is Osprey. So one of them would have to go heel unless you did what Hogan and Warrior did. When Hogan and Warrior were at WrestleMania 6, they were both baby faces. So that would be interesting. And then what do you do with Okada? Now, I wouldn't mind seeing Okada and Omega run it back. And Jay White is another guy who, I mean, although he's a little on the smaller side, he's I've been watching some of his New Japan matches. Woo! And Juice Robinson is back. I'm not saying he should be in the title contention, but he's good. Steve Parley, Sid Botch promo in WCW with Nash and Hall, all-time classic. You're half the man I used to be, and I have half the brain you do. Yeah, but that's what made Sid's promos so amazing. Was he literally was out of he butchered the words. But I tell you what, Sid gets a lot of shit, um, but watch the Shockmaster segment, which was botched. I think we all know how that was botched. Death Valley, California. And Sid is the one who kept that whole segment together. Like Booker T's laughing. I think you heard Ole Anderson go, "Oh my God," because he was the voice of the Shockmaster. You got Fred Ottman like fumbling around with the mask that had no eyes in it. It's not his fault. Flair bailed with the girl through the back door, and Sting and the British Bulldog were probably like, "Fuck, what do we do?" And Colonel Parker, I think, you know, Sid was the only one that kept it together. Um, I don't watch podcasts, but I'm sure Rogan and I listen. That's when I watched the UFC the most was when Tank Abbott was taking on Scott Ferozzo and Vitor Belfort, and I was at Alan Ed's Auto Sound once, getting something done to my car, a stereo system put in, and Tank Abbott was there. And I'm going to tell you, I've been in the room with a lot of big people. I was at a Russell Peters party once where it's the biggest guy I've ever seen. Russell's parties are the best because everyone there is successful in their field. There was some black dude at Russell's last party that I swear to God, I'm not exaggerating. He was the size of Giant Gonzalez. He was at least 7'4", and we were sitting next to each other. He was from Nigeria, and I have a size 13 double E foot. Like it's a pretty big foot. This guy had like a size 23 foot. Like it was unbelievable. Um, but Tank Abbott was more intimidating than this guy because he was at the Allen Eds getting, I'm sure, something done to his car. He just has a presence about him that very few people do. I don't think AEW could sell out a football stadium in Dallas. You'd have to stack the card. You'd have to, oh boy. I don't know. It would be, listen, anything's possible. And you got to give it to them. They put over 80,000 people in an arena in London where probably AEW isn't necessarily that popular. You'd have to do it right. You'd have to do it like they are good at pay-per-views. Some of their bookings for Dynamite and Rampage and Collision are a little wonky, but like, funny enough, they do pay-per-views very well. And wow, you'd have to have Osprey and MJF. You'd have to have a super card. You'd have to have Omega against Okada. You'd have to have Christian and Edge reunite against the Young Bucks. You'd have to just fill it with fantasy matches and steal a good free agent from WWE, like maybe a Drew McIntyre or whoever's contracts are up. But you'd also have to hope that, their contracts are up in time for them to go through the 90-day non-compete clause. And you'd have to have Flair involved, not wrestle, but like have him in some capacity. You'd have to have maybe call in Hogan to be a manager for someone. You'd have to it would have to be ridiculous. You'd have to have Ronda Rousey against Mercedes Moné. You'd have to, because, Ronda Rousey's someone who could go on the Tonight Show and talk about AEW. You'd have to really, like, pardon the pun, go all in. Just fantasy matchups. You'd have to get maybe instead of Logan Paul, they could get Jake Paul. You'd have to go. They could, but you'd have to really, really do it up right. They got some work to do in that regard. Yeah, but I don't know. I mean, Ross. I mean, Tank. He didn't have a triathlete's body, but like my brother has a body very much like Tank Abbott, and he's insanely in shape. Like he's probably got better cardio than I do. So he never, now he had a pretty limited gas tank. Now I'm not talking the Tank Abbott who fought like Kimbo Slice, but like back in the day, if you put all those guys, Severin and Fry and uh, Scott Barroso, Cabbage, all the, Tank probably had a decent gas tank. Elway, Broughton, 7. What up? Von Erichs would have to be there to have a yeah. I mean, you'd have to pick definitely. Yeah, I mean, you'd have to involve Kevin Von Erich. Um, yeah, that'd be a great matchup. Queen on. Is Sting going in the WWE in AEW Hall of Fame? I don't think they have one. But I mean, I'm trying to think of some of the other matches. I mean, you'd have to. Maybe, I mean, you'd have to get a guy like Ricochet, who I think is he a free agent? I don't really follow WWE. You'd have to, I mean, you'd have to just stack the card with, you'd probably now, AEW I think has the better international roster, so you'd have to do something with New Japan. Maybe you bring over David Finlay and the Bullet Club, and they try and do an invasion angle, but not a lot of people like Marks know who David Finlay and the Bullet Club in Japan now is, but like I don't. You'd have to get Dolph Ziggler in AEW. Like if I were them and you really wanted to do an American Stadium show, you'd have to fucking you'd have to get Dolph Ziggler, uh, Mustafa Ali, Matt Riddle, Elias. You'd have to get some WWE bodies on the show. Um, at least Dolph. Now I know WWE is doing something with TNA because I really like Moose. Um, so what Jericho movie? Yeah, I mean there are some guys who don't have great bodies, but they're in great shape cardio wise. So um, I mean, some guys. I mean, Roy Nelson had good cardio for a guy who looked like a fat slob. He had great cardio. Roy Nelson probably had better cardio than Alistair Overeem. Now, Overeem looks like a genetic fucking universal soldier, but his gas tank was a little wonky. Why won't WWE touch Moose? I'm new to the Moose game. Uh, I heard the words Dallas for the event. That's why I said that. I still don't think it's possible. I mean, you could like Texas Stadium or whatever the stadium's called now. I mean, but you definitely have to have a Von Erich involved. I mean, listen, anything's possible with good writing, but you would have to write that show almost a year out. Uh, oh, I didn't know about that, Kip. Oh, he beat up women and stuff. Oh, I don't. I'll have to look into that, John. I don't. Yeah, but I don't know, dude. I mean, WWE has some pretty sketchy people over there right now. So, I'm sure if we did a deep dive into the WWE roster, you could find some pretty fucking scummy people actively wrestling. I mean, look at the fucking Steelers. Like they just signed who was a guy that on Detroit who used to be on Pittsburgh. Was it Sutton? He had something with his girlfriend and I think that Detroit cut him like as soon as the story broke. Steelers signed him, so DDP Shoga versus Buff Bagwell's alcoholism. I mean, I'll pick DDP Shoga. I mean, if you could get Jake Roberts in shape and Scott Hall, but especially Jake Roberts, you're good. I didn't know that about Moose. That's disappointing. I was just about to buy that shirt. Trust the system. Well, maybe the girl had it coming. No, I'm just kidding. Just kidding. So, I mean, I'm sure AEW will have a Hall of Fame eventually, but that's going to be tough because they've only been around for 5 years. So I don't know. I mean, I would think the inaugural, Cody Rhodes would probably have to be in it. So, I mean, he was a founder. I mean, I would say the initial class of AEW's Hall of Fame would be, Cody Rhodes, Omega, the Bucks, Sting, Lois. I get Lois tomorrow. I just spoke with Gail. Lois will be in the building tomorrow afternoon. Gail has to go back home for a bit. So, yeah, I've done a comedy show with Jake Roberts, best storyteller. I've been doing stand-up comedy 25 years. Been around a lot of great storytellers. No one comes close to Jake Roberts. He just draws you in. And even if you don't like wrestling, you're drawn in to his stories. Like, he tells the funniest story, and I've told it a few times before, and I'm trimming the fat of he's driving down the highway with Brutus Beefcake, and Beefcake is saying, "Hey, I think my wife's cheating on me." And they literally look over, and his wife is in a car with Rick Rude. Yeah, I don't know a lot about. Oh, I know nothing about Moose. And this is why I wanted AEW to sign Dolph or Nick, because I think he would have put a lot of WWE fans on the AEW product, which is what they need to do now. But I've started watching TNA a little bit. I mean, I speed through most of it because outside of Moose and Nick, I'm not, and Mustafa, I'm just really not interested in a lot of their talent. But they're all great, but I just don't. You like who you like. So I think that I mean, to sell out an American stadium AEW, I mean, you definitely would have to sign Rousey, because she would get WWE eyes on the product. I mean, she's someone who you either are a big fan of or you hate watch. And her and Mercedes, that's a nice money match. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if that's the match for London. Because isn't Ronda in Ring of Honor now? Or she was? I mean, I don't think she's actively wrestling for Ring of Honor. But, I think it's possible, but you'd really have to, and I will say, I think AEW storytelling is better than it's ever been. But, to do a 100,000 seat stadium show in America, you'd have to really be firing on all creative cylinders. Well, but she's enough of a name, William, where, um, like, she's one of the few people that AEW could get that could go on The Tonight Show with Jimmy Fallon, that could go on Jimmy Kimmel and promote AEW. I mean, I don't think like Will Ospreay could go on Jimmy Kimmel or The Tonight Show, or Omega. I mean, they have a lot of international stars, but they don't have a lot of crossover stars. Like, there's very few people on an AEW roster that are in movies. So you'd really have to go all in on, just pulling out every fucking favor you could to sell out. You'd have to get Sting involved. Not that he's gonna wrestle, but you'd have to bring him back into the fold. I mean, Sting is a name. You'd have to, you'd have to have Darby Allin in a good match. Maybe with a smaller guy who's just been fired from WWE or something. Like, you'd have to just stack it with 10 fantasy matches, and that's going to be hard to do. But I think anything can be done if you listen. Tony Khan, he gets a lot of shit, but all the wrestling fans, and I know, William, you don't like the wrestling talk, so I appreciate you still being here. Tony Khan does a lot wrong, but he's also given a lot of guys creative possibility that if it was just WWE, they wouldn't have. I mean, Will Ospreay would be jobbing to Omos inside of 6 months. Maybe Omos gets cut, But you're gonna know, WWE ain't gonna help AEW out. They're gonna know, okay, All In, or let's say they have a stadium show, Super Bowl week. I don't know where I think the Super Bowl's in Vegas next year. And AEW is like, we're gonna play Vegas the week before. We're gonna sell out the Raiders Stadium. Now, I've been in that stadium. It's a pretty big stadium. So the WWE, is not going to cut anyone 3 months before that event that could help AEW in a stadium show. So, it's going to be, it's going to be a fantastic year, I think, for AEW. I mean, but now they've kind of done everything they can do. They've signed Osprey, they've signed Okada, they got Mercedes Moné. There's really not a lot of names out there left that you can sign outside of Rousey. And if she has concussion problems, um, you could still sign her to be an announcer. I don't think Rousey really likes wrestling. I mean, I think she loved Piper. Um, you'd have to do something like that, Queen On. I mean, I know you're kind of joking, but all right, Ross. Yeah, we'll definitely be streaming tomorrow. What up, Tommy Gunn, T Gun? Um, yeah, but I mean, I think they could. I mean, NBC is like, if they think people are going to watch Rousey on NBC, they'll put her on NBC. I mean, I don't think Rousey loves wrestling. She loved Piper, but she's like Sid. Sid didn't really like wrestling. He just, the money's good. Um, I mean, why get the shit beat out of you by Amanda Nunes and Holly Holm, where you can just, wrestle Becky Lynch or Sasha Banks, and you can still get hurt in wrestling. Obviously, look at Adam Copeland, but Brock Lesnar, maybe he's a free agent. Maybe Tony Khan, a wink, wink. Hey, don't resign, and we'll take care of you. I mean, I don't think too many people care about Brendan Schaub wrestling, but Rousey and Baker would be great. Um, the AEW guys need to be on podcast. Kenny Omega needs to be on What the Fuck. Yeah, I mean Okada. Well, Okada can't really speak English that well, so I don't know if that would go over well. But he is funny. Like in LA, when I was at the LA Dynamite show, he looked at the crowd and goes, "Shut up, bitches." He talked like RoboCop. I mean, that's AEW's biggest mistake. I mean, last year the main event at All in London should have been Omega and CM Punk, which I'm told Omega and Punk were down to work with each other, but the Young Bucks apparently were like, "Fuck that." But I mean, if that was WWE, the main event last year would have been Punk and Omega, but it was not. Natclo 2.0. I think we have a new person in the stream. Welcome. I don't recognize this name. We got 2 more minutes, guys. Then I got to go to the gym before the Comedy Store. So get those questions in now. And let me thank the super chatters, the tippers. Peter Chicken Man, Brennan, and Lance, thank you very much. I appreciate it. AEW needs someone new and fresh to elevate them after the CM Punk departure. Well, I mean, I would say that's Will Ospreay, to be honest with you, and Okada and Mercedes Moné. I mean, Jack Perry needs a good. I can't give you the Ray gun. I just know. It has to be a super chat, John Ray. I don't mean you super chat me, but the Ray gun is a special event. I just can't do it. I mean, Jack Perry. Maybe CM Punk comes back for this American Stadium show. I mean, you imagine this car, CM Punk and Jack Perry, be huge. Now, maybe they fucking hate each other and won't wrestle, but anything is possible in the world of pro wrestling. CM Punk on MLC, yeah, but Kevin doesn't like wrestling, so I don't think that would. I mean, Kevin is a very good interviewer, but Kevin's like, he doesn't know who CM Punk is. No, I'm going to shower real fast. That's why I got to do an hour on the nose. Buckshot Larry at the like button on your way out. Yes, please. The like button helps. Hitting the subscribe button helps. Yeah, Hangman Page. Where's Hangman Page? He's coming back. Now, I don't know. what his next program will be. Keith Lee, he's kind of, I'll guess Keith Lee's body's starting to break down because he's, getting a little older, and that's a lot of weight on those fucking knees, man. I mean, he's 350 legit. And, even though he's in incredible shape, that's a lot of weight on those knees. All right, 20 seconds left, guys. The arrow is on the end stream. So this was a fun Saturday night stream. Go over to MLC now. I don't think Kevin minded that I took 14 people out of his stream, but I'm trying to do this. We'll do it tomorrow night, 6 p.m. Sunday night. Have a good night.